Moderator is Helen Crowley. She's the Director of Strategy Nature Positive Landscape Initiative. Over to you.
Welcome back from the parallel sessions and welcome back to the plenary. It's lovely to have you all here for this fabulous panel. I'm so privileged to be part of a panel which really is full of some of the leaders in infrastructure, not only in Japan, but also with a global reach and a global influence, and also who represent different parts of the value chain of infrastructure, from the investing through to the operationalization, the building actually, the management. And so it's really quite a great opportunity for us to dig in, to think about and talk about what is nature positive infrastructure and how do we really get to a sort of mainstream approach for nature positive infrastructure. My panel is, as I've said, brilliant, as all the panels have been. It's been quite remarkable and wonderful to have such representation from the private sector of showing real action that's happening for nature positive. And up on the screen, you will see again everybody's names and titles, and I'll refer to them as we go through the panel, but I won't introduce them all here now. And as you already know, probably, there is the QR code that you can take a picture of, and you can respond to the poll, which is quite a long question. What is the most challenging, critical element for building a successful long-term partnership with local stakeholders in land and seascapes for nature-positive projects? And I would add assets as well to that. So it would be lovely to hear your reflections, and we'll get to that at the end. So my name, as you know, is Dr. Helen Crowley. I am the Director of Strategy at the Nature Positive Landscapes Initiative, which is an initiative that is about really operationalizing nature positive, creating and implementing business, helping businesses implement business models and new practices that deliver nature positive outcomes and deliver towards our global goals for nature positive. We focus mostly on the mining sector currently and how we work with mining companies to do that, but of course there's a lot of synergy with infrastructure. Before we go to the fantastic panelists and all the great examples that we're going to hear from them, I just wanted to sort of set the context, of course, for infrastructure let's talk about it as an asset class first. I mean, you've heard about how it is a huge lever for change and for at all scales, from local to global, regional, national. It's a vast asset class that ranges from canals and ports through to data centers and facilities. So it's a massive asset class. It is also one of the biggest investable asset classes, about 7 trillion currently. It's growing, and 60% of that investment is in Asia Pacific. So, and over the next 20 odd years, they expected 151 trillion to be put into infrastructure, invested into infrastructure, and that is double what has been happening over the last 20 years. So that gives us an incredible opportunity, right? Because infrastructure can drive social well-being, can help growth and prosperity in countries. It could also be done at the cost of nature. And what we want to talk about today is how it actually is done to benefit nature and also to benefit the infrastructure and the investment itself. The opportunity is built actually on 3 or 4 perhaps key trends. I'll just mention briefly. It's relatively new. It's only 2 to 3 decades old. That gives us an opportunity to shift and change the way infrastructure works and is invested in. It's growing rapidly as an asset class, and it has, although there are gaps, there are still gaps, particularly in Asia Pacific, where the infrastructure needs to be, wants to be, and what capital is required. So there's an opportunity there. It's a new context for infrastructure. We know, we've all heard about resilience, the need to build resilience, to be resilient, to contribute back to society and nature. It's a new context. There's a lot of opportunity, and we have proof points and policy signals. We're going to talk about some of those proof points today, about how you can integrate nature into infrastructure and have cost effectiveness and cost benefits and multiple other benefits that come out of that. So this sort of creates a real opportunity for how we look at infrastructure, not only as something we build and use, but something delivers multiple impact, positive impact and outcomes for nature and society through its whole value chain. So we're going to dig into that a bit now and go through the panel and just hear some perspectives so you can understand how already many of these companies and investors are starting to think, embed and act on creating nature positive infrastructure in landscapes and seascapes. First, I would like to go to a short video from the Asian Development Bank, who and we will talk about development banks later in the panel as well, who have played a very important role in infrastructure development. So Ms. Watanabe, Director of Environment at the Asian Development Bank, is now going to do a short message by video, and that'll help set the scene for what they're doing on nature and embedded infrastructure. Could we roll the video now, please?
Good afternoon. I'm Yoko Watanabe, Director for Nature and Environment at the Asian Development Bank. Nature is not a backdrop to development, it is the foundation. The triple planetary crisis of biodiversity loss, pollution, and climate change is eroding the very ecosystem our lives depend on. And nowhere is this more urgent than in Asia and the Pacific, where 75% of the economy relies on nature. The question is not whether we can afford to invest in nature, it is whether we can afford not to. Nature-positive infrastructure, as IUCN defines it, means halting and reversing biodiversity loss, adopting nature-based solutions and regenerative design, ensuring improved ecosystem and habitat connectivity. So what does nature-positive infrastructure look like in practice? Think leaf-enhanced seawalls, wetlands that filter water and buffer floods, green corridors running through cities. In Bangladesh, for example, ADB have supported the world's first dedicated elephant overpass built into the ADB-supported Dohazari-Cox's Bazar Railway. The overpass allows endangered Asian elephants to safely cross the tracks, reducing human-wildlife conflict and ensuring habitat connectivity. But that railway project did not just protect elephants. It allows improved mobility for fishing communities, farmers, and tourists that boost the economy. And that is exactly what nature-positive infrastructure delivers. When we build with nature and not against it, communities could gain resilience and improve livelihoods. None of these happens unless businesses, finance, local governments, and communities can come together. That is precisely why we are here, to turn plans into action and together to unlock shared opportunities for building more nature-positive infrastructure. The private sectors brings capital and innovation, and blended finance could bring needed scale. Governments provide needed policy framework, and communities bring local knowledge and sustainable solutions. At ADB, we're connecting all of these through our Environmental Action Plan that commits us to scale our nature-positive finance towards 2030. Our Healthy Oceans Initiative has mobilized over $4 billion since 2019. Our Regional Flyway Initiative is mobilizing $3 billion to restore wetlands that sustain not only migratory birds, but livelihood of 200 million people. We're also advancing cleaner air and circular economy solutions from low carbon transport to zero waste cities, turning pollution challenges into livability gains. And the Nature Solutions Finance Hub, launched at COP28 with partners as a flagship for nature finance, is bringing all of these together. We are mobilizing public and private sector capital, developing blended finance instruments, and building a pipeline of bankable nature-positive infrastructures across the region, targeting to catalyze $5 billion by 2030. Nature is a solution. ADB is ready to work with you to scale the partnerships, finance, and ambitions needed for a nature-positive future in Asia and the Pacific. Thank you very much.
That was a terrific scene setter. That was great from AIIB, Asian Development Bank. Thank you. Let me now turn to the panel, and we're going to start with the builders. So we're going to, the organisations that actually build the infrastructure. And firstly, I'd love to get to focus on Mr. Yamashita, who is with Daiwa House, which is a lifestyle infrastructure, building homes and residential and commercial buildings. So I'd really like you to sort of to start us off making this very tangible. And as a major developer, you build an urban or suburban project. What does nature positive infrastructure literally look like on the ground compared to perhaps a traditional build? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm Yamashita from Daiwa House. First of all, I'd like to share with the audience about our idea of the company in terms of the construction and urban development. In 2010, in Japan, well, COP10 was held in Japan at the time. We started aiming at harmonization with the nature, and the biodiversity declaration was issued, and the 5 guidelines for action were set. In terms of the basic philosophy, as a member of the global society, we are to recognize biodiversity's benefit and work to be considerate to the environment so that we can contribute to sustainable development of the human and nature in harmony. So we work in a variety of the activities, and that comes with the changing of the natural environment. So as a developer, we have to be responsible working on regeneration of natural environment and circulation. We believe that is our social mission. Now, based on our idea and philosophy, we're working on the greening of the city. From 2010, after the COP15, well, the halt and reverse toward 2030 was set as a international target. But at that time, we also came up with a group-wide green concept of the let's connect the greenery to our customers when we are to do the greening. We have promoted to our customer about the utilizing native species. So our focus is not only green in appearance, but we are to give consideration to introducing species which is the native species. So we came to give consideration to the quality aspect. The green area is declining in Japan, and the green corridor or ecosystem network is being disrupted. Against this issue, we are to take measures by implementing native species to reconnect the green corridor. That's what we are doing. And in extension of these activities, we are to be working in collaboration with our customers. And to that end, the quantitative assessment is needed to gain understanding by our customers and work with them. So we work with Think Nature, and with the help, we conduct analysis, and we found out that when we compare the greening with over 50% of native species, there are 3 times more positive impact from greening in terms of biodiversity. We confirmed that. This is not only to do with the detached housing, but this is also to do with the logistic facilities or apartment houses. So regardless of the objectives of the development, we are doing this approach. And in past 4 years, the more than 1 million hectare of the area is greened with native species or covered. And we're now in the process of revising our environmental activities. And we have now a new target toward 2035.
Of high connectivity and native species. So she isn't just planting trees, it's the right trees in the right spot, and that's what gets us to nature positive. I would like to stick with the builders and turn over to Ms. Onda of Mitsui & Co. Now, your level of infrastructure is massive also with offshore renewable infrastructure, and so you have landscapes and seascapes that you work in as well. So can you, practically speaking, can you talk to how you design large-scale infrastructure like wind or port facilities or whatever on land as well that actively fosters marine and terrestrial biodiversity rather than displacing it? Thank you.
Hi. Thank you very much. I am Onda of Mitsui and Company. Thank you very much for this opportunity today. First and foremost, about our attitudes towards natural capital, I'd like to talk about our company on the forest a little bit. As a company, nature capital is nature assets, and across 76 sites, we have 45,000 hectares of forest owned by the company, which is equivalent to 0.1% of Japan's national land. So we say that the natural capital is such an important topic. We have a sense of ownership, and of course, we are trying to conserve nature as well as biodiversity, and at the same time, we are trying to deliver business as well, so they are mobilized as strategic assets. That is the sort of progress we have been making. Also, across the company, because of such initiatives in the background regarding business, Mitsui, through investment, advances various business activities. And when promoting a business, of course, ocean and also land biodiversity, terrestrial land diversity are kept in mind. And a case in point, representative example would be that on the terrestrial area, we have a mining business and also hydropower generation, and we have a mining business as well. So there is a water risk in a way. When we conduct this kind of a business, there are inevitable impacts. So we need to translate them into business opportunities. So we have this desalination business from seawater. Also, landscape approach has been taken in palm oil sourcing or procurement business, and when it comes to the sea or maritime area in Australia, we have a sunlight salt production business as well. So, how do we see all these things? Regarding the copper mine business, there is a great deal of water impacts, and land use change may impact ecosystem. In case of our company, we have Chile. We have mountains in Chile or mines in Chile. That is an area where water risk is high, and we are advancing development activities. As such, when it comes to development activities, first and foremost, when we develop these mines, we transplant the local plants. When we close the mines, we plant the native species so that we can preserve the ecosystem. And regarding water resources, we need to preserve and conserve water resources. So within our mines, we have boosted a recycling rate, and this is something that we are still working on as well. So from the stage of design, we already embed all these aspects so that we can realize circularity in our water use. Also, hydropower generation, we have some stations in Brazil. This one is in the watershed of Amazon River. We have some hydropower stations. And against this backdrop, biodiversity is very rich in this area. We recognize that. So be it fish and mammals, plants and animals are conserved, flora and fauna, and we are also making contributions to local community by building schools, hospitals, as well as housing. And in so doing, not only our business can be benefited, we are also working on the entire development for the community as a whole. Regarding palm oil procurement business, there was a subsection about this. In Malaysia, natural environment and local community are also engaged, not only for a business, but also stakeholders can collaborate through this landscape approach, and that is exactly what we are working on with partner companies. For example, environmental restoration type agriculture or farming is promoted, and smallholder farmers are also supported, and producers' livelihood are being stabilized so that we can improve their lives as well. So through this landscape approach, we are working with stakeholders. That is one key important aspect. Finally, in the sea area, this is within Australia's national park. There is a place called Shark Bay. So we have this sunlight salt business being deployed. Just like this one, in case of this one as well, we have a richer nature and richer biodiversity as well. So mangrove forests need to be monitored on a continuous basis, and if we find out that if there are any major impacts that we are delivering, we should be able to detect it, and we have to make sure that this is not happening. And also there is a dugong, which is an endangered species. Without affecting dugongs, we are also paying considerations in carrying out business activities. This is not really a public infrastructure, but through our investment, we try to create business assets, and we are impacting natural capital to some extent. So we try to monitor it, and also we make considerations even in the design stage. So each business is considering that. Thank you.
For highlighting those really important examples and elements of a nature positive approach, which is the species, the collective action and collaboration, and also looking beyond your boundary into the landscape and the water catchment to understand how to be a better water steward. So thank you, terrific examples. Now we're going to turn to the money. Who finances this, and how does the finance approach support a more nature positive infrastructure? So I'd love to talk to you, Mr. Takanashi, of the Chief Sustainability Officer of the Sumamoto Mitsui Financial Group, which is one of the largest financial groups in Japan, and that you actually, the question more to you is about the standards and the return metrics as a financier. Nature positive infrastructure supposedly lacks the standardized return metrics, and that sort of creates, that shows the value and the business case for nature positive. So from your perspective as a financial institution, do you see challenges associated with this?
はい、ありがとうございます。
Well, thank you very much. I'm Takanashi from SMFG. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Now, Helen-san, about your question, I'd like to respond. Well, for us as a loan provider, and also as a company who support bond issuance, as such, return metrics is really important for us, and for us, cash flow would be our top priority, to be honest. Because we have to be confident that the money is to come back, they'll be returned. So even without a complicated nature-related index, if we can be confident that they will be returned, we can provide loan. But even if the nature-related index look good, but the return is not to be able to be expected, it's difficult to see the flow of money into the potential projects. I think that is the reality. In the context of decarbonization, for example, for solar, there's much money going to that area because the CO2 is a easy indicator. Maybe that's how you think, but actually the cost is low, and also the surcharge is being collected, and as a form of it and such, a stable revenue is generated. That is why the money does flow into solar and other decarbonization projects which does not really produce profit is having difficulty gathering money. So nature-related index, of course, is important, but it's not really what decide how the money flows. What is most important is the following. Today, the natural benefit from natural capital is provided for free, but we need to see the change to see that the cash flow comes from such service. And then, if indices help, they should be used. But what is most important is, once again, cash flow can be generated.
Thank you so much for putting that perspective out there, that it's really about where do the revenues come from for your type of financing, for debt financing. And we will talk in a little moment with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank about how they view investment. So it might be a little different as well. But I think that is an important point. Let's not focus too much on those metrics for terms of finance, but what are the revenues and the returns looking like? Thank you. So now I'd like to talk to the insurer in the supply chain or the value chain of infrastructure. And we'd like to this is Ms. Sakai of Sompo Japan Insurance, and she's going to speak more from the underwriting side of the insurance rather than the investment side. And I have a question. So from that perspective, because it's such an important player in how we get infrastructure obviously built and maintained, and especially in this high-risk world that we're in, as an insurer of this, and when you look at natural infrastructure or green-grey infrastructure or green infrastructure, like a mangrove forest or a seawall or a wetland, it behaves differently to concrete. And so how you look at it in terms of risk, and it must be different. So from your perspective, how do you approach that when you're looking at more nature-embedded infrastructure? Thank you.
はい、ありがとうございます。損保ジャパンの酒井と。
Thank you very much. This is Sakai of Sompo Japan. So we are an insurance company, insurer. So for as long as 140 years, we have been responding to various disasters. When we established our business, we were firefighting squad, and people would go to some sites with fires. In modern times, fires and earthquakes, of course, happen, but there are climate change impacts such as typhoons and water disasters and snow and ice disasters. And all these disasters are intensifying, and I believe that everybody in this hall probably recognizes this. Non-life insurance companies have various data and knowledge after facing a number of challenges. So we have this important role of providing knowledge and insights on our part as well, prior to a disaster and in the midst of a disaster and post-disaster. Across all these different stages, we have this Hikeshi DNA 2030 project. Also, not only climate change, but also biodiversity and circular economy, we are taking this synergy approach. So Sompo Earth Positive Actions were also announced and published back in May. We're making investment into natural investment. This is on the extension of disaster prevention and disaster mitigation. This is an important adaptation measure when it comes to the intensification of disasters. Vis-a-vis global value chains, they are causing serious physical risks. As an insurer, as one of the solutions to this issue, business interaction insurance is one product. Interruption insurance, I mean. So this is when the suppliers are affected by a disaster, production and procurement may be stopped, and there could be financial damage, but this insurance product can cover and compensate that. This kind of a product or instrument is very popular in the West. Maybe 80% of all businesses have such coverage, but in case of Asia, the participation rate is only 20% or less. So there is a great deal of a protection gap. This kind of a protection gap is not the only issue for the insurance sector on its own, but it leads to corporate value. So this is such an important management theme. Also, this importance can be promoted in Japan, and as a Japanese financial institution, we are the only member of the WBCSD, which is for Sustainable Development meeting. And for managers, regarding physical risks, there is a handbook. We published a handbook, and as for the Japanese version of that, ourselves and Toyota as well as Fujitsu and AIIB decided to publish this jointly. And to Japanese managers, we are trying to raise awareness about such risks. We are trying to raise awareness. So we try to preempt such physical risks. And in this book, it says that the risks of the company need to be identified and the assessment needs to be made and strategy needs to be formulated. That will be the flow. So to build global governance, these concrete steps are laid out and set out. Helen-san asked me a question about how to measure natural capital value. Now, quantitative measurement is still work in progress in my view. Having said that, at the same time, by leveraging ecosystem disaster reduction and mitigation, eco-DRR, nature-based solutions have been established scientifically to a great deal, or are being established, as was mentioned by Takanashi-san earlier. If there is appropriate measurement methodology, that's all good, but before such a thing is available, there are so many things that we can do. As P&C insurance company, risk management related knowledge and experiences, and OECM promotion, adaptation and resilience can be enhanced, and local communities can also evolve as well. We want to make contributions to all these areas. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a really nice overview of a holistic approach to how you can look at natural infrastructure not only as a risk mitigator, but as a value creator for social and environmental value, but that we still need to do a bit of work on how we articulate that. So now I want to turn to our final speaker on the panel, Mr. Gao, who's an economist at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, who've been one of the multilateral development banks who've been really leading on thinking about how nature can be infrastructure. And they've got a whole pillar of their strategy around nature as infrastructure. So referring back to our previous speaker that was talking sort of about risk and what is the challenges for financing. A development finance organization has a role to play to de-risk and sort of mitigate some of the challenges for institutional investors, for example. But I wanted you to perhaps help us understand in your pioneering work where you really look at nature as infrastructure, and from your vantage point, how can your development finance approach really bridge the worlds between mainstream finance and building and implementing and running nature as infrastructure? How can you absorb risks and create more of a flow of finance, significant flow of finance? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jingyu, and I'm very happy and honored to be here in this beautiful city of Kumamoto. It is very similar from where I was born in southern China. So a lot of trees, water, and mountains. So perhaps I can start with a very brief introduction of AIIB because we are relatively new. We're only 10 years old until today. And over the past 10 years, we have developed 111 member economies around the world with a total number of 384 infrastructure projects, mostly in Asia, but also in other areas as well. And these would total around 76 billion USD, and almost over 50 billion USD of this portfolio is actually classified as climate finance. So basically, our mission is to finance infrastructure for tomorrow. There are a lot of discussions what it means, and that brings me to the question that you raised. So back to the question about our agenda of nature as an infrastructure. So 3 years ago, we published a flagship report with exactly the same name as nature as infrastructure. At that time, everybody was talking about how to invest in biodiversity in an institutional way. And I went back to check the dictionary, what the word infrastructure means. Specifically, it means the facilities that provide sustained services for human society. For example, transport, energy, and also water, etc. By this account, actually, ecological services provided by forest, ocean, and all these nature components, they actually count for this definition. So why not we invest in them? So let me give you like two examples. The first one is actually my home country, China. In northern China, the government and also international collaborators have been working together to plant trees and grass in the northern China, where there are a lot of like sandstorms over the past 40 years. There are a lot of like local communities and government efforts and also private sector activities going on. And as you probably have felt, the frequency of sandstorms have reduced. And of course, most recently, there are other factors like climate change that the sandstorm come back. But by reforesting in this massive area in China, we have seen very positive, not just environmental outcome, but also economic outcome. Another example, I think this is related to our this year's report. It is about where the water flows. So what we found is that if you look at the rainfall in each country, they are around 120,000 billion cubic meters of water flying over different continents. And 45% of them is generated by systematically essential ecological system, particularly rainforest in Amazon, Indonesia, and the Congo Basin. So if you look at this in perspective, this fresh water provided by the forest is not valued properly. It's almost for free. I actually zoom into Japan's data. So Japan's rainfall, 78% depends on ocean, of course, but almost 18% of its domestic rainfall comes from neighbor countries. So again, these brought us to another like a serious discussion of how we can make use of these like financial tools. So last year we published a report together with the Paulson Institute and also worked together with the Stanford University Nature Capital Alliance, basically try to understand how you reevaluate the nature and frame them as infrastructure. Because the fundamental challenge we face is that for transport, energy, water, you have like measurable economic values. But for nature, the method is still being explored. But luckily, the Stanford University's team has been using this for a long time and provide us a standardized method to value the nature. So in this context, actually, we have like two very fresh new projects in AIIB. The first one I mentioned is called the Nature Finance Accelerator Program, focusing in two major commercial banks in China. What happens is that our bank provides almost 400 million USD loan to these commercial banks so that they provide on-lending loans to these sub-borrowers who may invest in, for example, riverine restoration and also ecologically friendly manufacturing like bamboo forest. What happens on the ground is that we work with a lot of like researchers in this area, trying to help them reduce their financial risks. For example, there's one borrower where they try to actually use the nature capital approach to reevaluate their collaterals so that they probably get a lower interest rate from the commercial banks we're financing. I'll end my remarks by another project is in Brazil, because in order to finance nature, it's not just about construction, but also it needs an enabling policy environment that helps the contractors and private sector better understand and also mitigate the risks. So in Brazil, we have a $1 billion policy-based loan, basically trying to help the government reform their environmental governance, like carbon market mechanism, and also help them how to reevaluate and strengthen their land resilience, particularly in safeguarding the essential rainforest, Amazonian rainforest. So it's still a discussion going on, a lot of effort, and we're very happy to work with both public and private sectors to move this forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I like the way that you highlighted that natural capital can make the value of nature more visible in these transactions and these projects and assets. So thank you all very much. We're really down to the wire on time, so I don't think we're going to be able to do another round, unfortunately, but we did get some truly tremendous examples of how there's really a pretty impressive foundation already of testing and iterating and innovating around how do you embed nature into infrastructure? How do you deliver not just nature outcomes through infrastructure projects, but also social outcomes? Where you build it, or how you take into consideration for the communities and the seascapes and landscapes around, and how you look to really extending the value proposition to those areas beyond the actual footprint of the infrastructure, how you design it, how you build in multiple value and articulate that value proposition, that infrastructure with nature embedded into it, and concerning and valuing nature in the way it's built is actually a really tremendous value proposition. So with this infrastructure for tomorrow, I think we have huge opportunities. We head into this 20 years of big spend and lots of challenges. We already have some great examples about how we can do that in a way that is going to help halt the drivers of loss and help build and restore and regenerate nature towards our global nature positive outcomes. So thank you all very much. I'll just put up the results of, if you can just put up the results of the poll, just to see what those critical elements, we won't go through them, but at least you can have them for reference. Did we get the poll results? Oh, well, there we are. We've saved a bit. Oh, there they are. Great. And so the stakeholder planning and execution seem to be one of the most, and that is true. We've got a plan from the beginning that this not only delivers the multiple benefits and the outcomes, but that it also gives the returns that are needed and provides the services that it's intended for, as well as additional services for society and environment. So it's that planning, but all of them seem to be pretty important as far as elements. So it is complex, but you've heard about how we're doing it already and how we're going to build on that to do more in the future. Thank you all very much, and thank you to the distinguished panelists. It was brilliant interventions and great examples. Thank you all.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. Please give them a big round of applause.